without further ado, let's kick off with our opening speaker to find out how he's withstood the most grueling tests of leadership this year. And we have calling in from Berlin, Tao Tao, co-founder and COO of GetYourGuide. Hi, Tao, how are you?
Hi, Hoon. Good to talk to you as always.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's all how we ever meet these days, right?
That's better than meeting at all.
Yeah, I know. So let's connect the past, present, and future in this conversation. So I want to go back to the past, a bit of a rewind. And in an internal memo in July, you wrote to your staff and you said the crisis gave us clarity, and now we are on the messy road to recovery. What clarity did it give you?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the clarity that any unforeseen accident or happening gives you, which is just an adrenaline rush. So part of it is also the feeling of clarity. But then I think what's interesting, and many of us has probably experienced this, is how suddenly important topics weren't suddenly so important anymore, and the truly important topics were really crystallized. And you know, this was an immediate realization, but when we huddled in our room with the leadership team, and we really came up with very, very obvious things that were super clear, right? The number one is you have to protect the company. This is something that we've been building for the last 11 years, and you know, we're not going to let a crisis ruin this. So we made sure that, you know, we cut costs, especially on marketing, on tools. We made use of some government schemes that could extend short-term labor to our staff. So just really make sure that we can get through this crisis, with a good cost structure. Two, for us, it was really about the employees. And I think in many ways we were fortunate that we saw this crisis coming from a mile away with our Asian offices or with our Italian offices, which was hit the earliest in Europe. And we were, I think, the first company in Germany to send everybody on, work from home, making sure that people were set up. So I think really protecting the company, the employees. And I think what was also very interesting is the clarity of, how customer oriented should we be? Because it's always easy to be customer oriented when things are good. It's much harder when things are not looking so good. And we made the commitment to say, no, we should remain customer obsessed, because these are the customers who will fund the recovery. So, for example, we instituted a free cancellations, no questions asked, even within 24-hour policy that made sure that we also remain committed to our customers. So I think those are just a few things that for us.
So the clarity that you had was, one is to protect the company and the staff, and so you made some decisions around staffing, and then clearly your customers as well. I think there was also that controversial decision to take on Google at that time too. So tell us the thinking behind that and where that stands right now.
Yeah, so there were a few things. So I think maybe taking a step back of what we were really thinking about is, it was a point of reflection, right? So this was a reflection of, how do we grow in the last 10, 11 years, and how do we plan to grow in the future? And I think Google is one part of the equation, but I think a bigger part of the question for us was, how do we actually, keep customers in our ecosystem, right? So I think, we all work in travel. We all know that marketing cost is an essential part of our lives. But as we now move into this, new world where certainly we have to all be a little bit more cost conscious, the big question for us is, how do we invest now to make sure that customers that we acquire also stay with us? And so, for example, we continue to make strategic investments into our product, into our app, into our CRM systems, into our offerings, trying to give customers reasons to come back to us.
Right.
And become a little bit less dependent on, how you acquire customers through all kinds of channels.
Right. So sort of becoming less reliant on an external source, or Google being one of them, and becoming a lot more self-reliant. So going backwards to go forward, I mean, Tao, it's been an amazing crisis of leadership for you. I mean, a test of leadership. Any lesson from the past that you're taking into the future with you? I mean, now that you've come up to this point.
Yeah, I think what's funny is, so we started the company in 2009, which is right in the depth or the aftermath of the financial crisis. And so back then, through those first couple of years, is what really shaped our company culture. And in our current company core values, what was interesting is when we read those core values now in this current crisis to our teams, they resonated even more. So, for example, we have things in our core values like thriving in uncertainty, or making something out of nothing, or taking ownership and keeping it simple. So I think a lot of these things were very core to our DNA when 11 years ago we were in Zurich, living below the minimum wage, no VC funding or any of that sort, and just being creative with the resources you have. I think that's really the number one lesson that we could take from the past.
Yeah, so you started poor, and then so you're used to being poor, and you're used to, being poor at this moment. So now let's come to the present now, and the news out of Europe seems to be very messy. How messy is the road to recovery right now? Is it extremely messy, or do you see pockets of light?
Many pockets of lights, and while I'm not the virologist, but my co-founder Johannes is, we all know that there is vaccines and antigen tests coming. But at the same time, I think the road will be very messy. And there are two main reasons. One is it's just still highly uncertain. So I think like many other companies, we're doing our 2021 planning. And normally you can take the macro trend line as a given. This is going to be a year where you don't know whether the macro trend line will be a given. It's kind of, plus minus 50%. So that uncertainty is just very, very messy. And as humans, we don't love uncertainty. I think the other thing is, and this is a little bit outside of the travel industry, it's just the upheaval in societal and economic and all these challenges that this crisis has really just amplified, that affects our employees, affects our customers, affect our business partners, our shareholders. So I think it's just the conflicts of so many different elements that will make this unfortunately still quite a bit messy.
Yeah, so it's messy all around, not just business, not just travel, but everything, the whole world. So we gotta really stay focused on it. How are you getting your business in shape? Okay, you got the cost down and all that. What is stronger about your business today versus 12 months ago?
So I think one is our digital product. So one of the decisions that we took in this crisis is we wanted to continue to invest into our key strategic initiatives. And the reason is we didn't want to sacrifice our future because, of a crisis that we know is, maybe not short-lived, but certainly won't last for 10 years. So we didn't want to give up on our future. And, our tech teams and product teams have been working tirelessly over the last, 6 months, and we'll work tirelessly over the next, another 12 months on the digital product, because, that is how we were talking earlier about retention of customers, delight customers, make them come back. That's one. I think also our supply will be much better. So we work with, our, from attractions to the small mom and pop stores offering incredible food walking tours to make sure that how we get ready in the recovery. We've been supplying them similar to what you're doing here with conferences, with information, with context, data on recovery. So I think that will be better. And yeah, sure. I think thirdly, I think the team will be more resilient. We always talk internally, for many people, this is the first real curveball in their careers. And, if you choose to persist and choose to build that muscle, I think that will be a real strength.
Yeah, certainly product has become the star, during this time, right? With every company just kind of hunkering down and building. And on day 3, we have a whole session just around product and what people are building. So let's go to a bit of the future. And there's a Chinese proverb that says, when the winds are strong, even pigs can fly. Which pigs will be left flying after this storm is over, Tao?
Yeah, I love that proverb. It sounds particularly funny in Chinese, I think. So I think the first pigs that will be left flying are the digital pigs. Having a website clearly won't be enough anymore. And we always say that Corona has been this massive mandatory internet schooling for everyone, right? For all ages and all generations. My parents now ordering water from there's these water delivery companies and so on and so forth. So a simple example in our industry, experience industry, has been ticketing, right? So previously it would be very normal and very common to queue in person very tightly for an hour to get tickets. Post-crisis or in the aftermath, it's very clear that digital ticketing with time ticketing is the way to go. So I think digital is unavoidable, and companies that haven't sufficiently digitized, I think will be challenged. And I think the second thing is companies, and this sounds a little bit cliche, that add real value. And what I mean by that is, I think the last 10 years, things have been going very well. There have been a lot of businesses that have, made profits of, legacy, opaque markets, maybe just persisted through funding instead of customer funding. So investor funding instead of customer funding. Or maybe companies, who only survive because, they made some arbitrage of, from free traffic to paid traffic, or these kind of things that, made a profit, but didn't add real value. And Corona, I think, has this massive cleansing effect that only those who are truly digital and truly add value in some shape or form will persist. And I think they will do even better after the crisis than before.
So really kind of stripped everything down to its essentials. And if you were to use the pig analogy again, it's like, it's no longer okay just to put lipstick on a pig, right? I mean, it's like you got to be a real digital pig without lipstick in a way. So it's happening in Singapore. Like, we go to the zoo these days. You really have to book in advance, and you show up at the time that you, have booked your time slot. So definitely, it's pushed the industry, forwards. It will also be a smaller industry for sure, right? So, you once said to me that growth is a choice. So how are you rethinking growth right now?
Yeah, I think as mentioned earlier, I think we also made some lessons from the past, right? In the past, certainly we've been well funded. We use all kinds of acquisition channels. But I think one key realization is it's always the customers who are your main investor and your main source of funding, right? Because they pay really for the salaries and for your innovation and your investments. And so I think it will be the customers who will fund the recovery. It's the number one way to think about it, right? Which is, your contribution margin and so on. So I think that's one. And then I think with the growth as a choice, it's more true than ever. So growth as a choice for us is a question of mentality, right? The way I look at it is, as a company, you can choose to be cozy and comfortable, or you can choose to grow, which comes with risks, right? So it's not a risk-free endeavor to choose growth. And I think similarly for individuals, especially, we have a lot of, young folks, first job, second job, where this is just super, super hard, right? And so choosing to grow is uncomfortable because you have to leave your comfort zone. You have to, be exposed to constructive criticism. And so it's that mentality to grow and take risks on a daily basis that will, I think, mark the success of individuals and companies alike.
Okay, Tao, we have a question from the audience, and it's actually a good one because it was going to lead me to my next question. But so, what would a future you say to a December 2019 Tao Tao to help you and your team through 2020?
Through 2020, look, I mean, I would say the same thing that he's been saying for the last 10 years, because I think there are certain, I always say that there are very few new truths or very few new original thoughts being created, and there's a lot of wisdom from the past. I think a lot of the wisdoms is you have to remain, focused on your long-term strategy while relentlessly executing today, right? So what can I do today? What can I do this week to move, EBIT, to move contribution margin, to move revenue, to decrease, breakage, or all these kind of things, while staying very, very true to the long-term strategy. So you cannot just suddenly change direction. And I give you an example. During this crisis, there were a lot of voices both inside and outside the company who said, hey, you guys should, pivot to digital experiences because people won't leave the house anymore. And we said, no, disagree completely, because travel is here to stay. Real life experience is here to stay. Human connections are here to stay. It will be bigger than ever. It will be more digital than ever. And, we want to retain our leadership here. And so, that's the long-term vision that you need to be, focused on, while making sure that you execute very relentlessly day to day while having that vision, in place. So I think that will remain true as ever. And then the second thing that, I think is true as ever is, I always say that you have to make learning your superpower. So as an individual, whether you're a new graduate or, someone who's 20 years in a job, and in the crisis, it's more true than ever because there's so many new paradigms. Consumer preferences are shifting ever so slightly. Ecosystems are changing, value chains are changing. If you're not agile enough and learn very quickly, that is a big risk as well. So, stay focused on long term, execute in the short term, and make learning your superpower.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to what you said in the beginning, that you weren't prepared to sacrifice, the future, right? So, so you really stay focused on that future. So this is when I want to bring out our blank canvas, guys. So this is our blank canvas. And this is part of our WiT for Good project that together we want you to create a piece of physical art that will be auctioned off at the closing on October 1. And the funds will go towards the Island Foundation. So what it will be is a physical memory of a virtual year when we all kind of became ghosts in the machine. So what we want you to do is type in the word cloud in the Q&A, all right? The 3 words that come to mind when I say travel 2025. And Tao, you're going to kick us off. What are the 3 words that come to mind when I travel 2025?
Okay, and this can be, of course, what I want it to be, right? Not what I think it will be, but
yeah, totally. This is like wishing, right? Blank canvas. Let's imagine. Let's fantasize.
Right. So I would say sustainable. So, you know, in all aspects, economically, environmentally, societally, so sustainable. 2, I would say rich. And what I mean by that is, you know, not travel just focus on, you know, commodities or you know, how do I get from A to B, but you know, the memory forming things like experiences like food. So rich, I think that would be great, or richer. I think 3 would be free. So free from in a liberal sense, you know, I think we sometimes forget that we live in the most peaceful time in the history of mankind, and especially given the trends of you know countries isolating a bit more, borders closing, if not physically, then at least mentally. I think that would be ever more important.
Yeah.
There's this famous saying. I think an economist historian who said, you know, if goods don't cross borders, then soldiers will. I think this can be equally applied to travel, where you say, you know, if travelers don't cross borders, soldiers will. So yeah, sustainable, rich, and free.
Great. You know, so we're going to see what the word cloud will say. And what we're going to do is collect those words. And basically, we got our artists ready to create a piece of art that will be auctioned off on October 1 closing. So it will be a future of travel created by all of us in the WiT community today. So thank you very much for that. So let's do a rapid fire, Tao. Okay. And I know you read a lot. So what's the best book that you read this year?
Best book. So I read a really great book. It's called The Lies That Bind by Anthony Appiah. It's a book about identity. I think next to Corona, identity certainly has been a major topic this year. Personally relevant for me, coming from 2 different countries. It's just a very interesting exploration, historical and philosophical, of identities like religion, color, creed, country, class. So a great book.
Okay, and identity should bind; it should not divide, right?
Depends.
Okay, what's the worst quote that you read this year? Because everybody was just sharing quotes. What's the worst quote that you read this year?
Ooh, I think there have been so many bad quotes this year. Most of them, I don't remember a particular one, and usually the worst ones are the political ones. I want to stay away from that. But generally, I would say the quotes that don't deal with the complexity, uncertainty that we're facing, and trying to come with overly simple, overly simplified solutions, or prescribing the future in definitive terms. I think that is not what we need right now. There are no simple solutions, but we got to deal with the complexity of it.
All right. Who's the best role model for your generation?
I think also in recent months we have seen that there are no true idols, right? I mean, everybody's flawed. I generally, and this is not a cop-out, but I generally believe that there is something to be learned from anyone. But if you have to put me on the spot and name someone, I'm just gonna take something. So because this is from recent memory, and I'm a huge football fan, I'm gonna take Thomas Müller, who recently won the Champions League. And the reason I like him a lot is he's clearly by far not the most talented player on the planet, but he's super persistent. He knows where the strengths are, and he doesn't try to compensate for his weaknesses, but he plays for his strength. He's a team player. He doesn't hold back with criticism. He's someone you would want on your team, and someone you would want to follow. So he's a good one.
I knew you would choose a footballer. Wow, I just knew that. Who is the worst role model for your generation?
Oof. Well, there are the obvious ones, right? Let's not go to the obvious ones. Again, I would make it a bit more general. I would say it's anyone who is currently trying to stop or kill dialogue, And because I do think one of the core problems we have in our generation now, in especially the young generations, is a lack of willingness to persuade and a lack of humility to be persuaded, right? And so I think it's that competition of ideas that in travel, in the economy in general, will make us better. So in the company we have one value, which is don't hold back, which is just put out your ideas and push for it, and then of course then let the data speak. I think that is maybe something that that would be great. So there are a lot of people just pushing ideologies that I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, the willingness to persuade, which always takes a lot of energy, right? Instead of just walking away, and the humility to be persuaded. Yeah. So since this theme is about time travel, right? So if you could travel back in time, what period would you pick?
I'll pick a recent memory. I'll probably, go back to the summer of 2014. Things were looking good back then. Also because, Germany won the World Cup that year. That was a fun summer, party, lots of good emotions. Would probably not want to stay for too long because, it wouldn't be real.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if you could travel to the future, what would you pick?
So I would pick WiT in October 22, when this crisis is all over and we can, share our war stories, how we all emerge stronger from the crisis than before.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are sharing war stories, and we are all trying to do the best we can in this virtual constrained world. But certainly, Tao, I followed your adventures through the last 10 years. I remember first meeting you 10 years ago when you started GetYourGuide, and the growth that you guys had, and now coming to a stop, and how you are holding it together. So final message, right? You did say that this crisis is your graduation to your generation. You did say that. So if you were to give a commencement address now on your graduation from this University of COVID, what would you say?
So I would maybe repeat one message I said earlier, just because I think it's, especially for graduates, is so important, which is to make learning your superpower, because that is ultimately what is a strength that will persist with your entire lives. And the other one is, I'm just going to copy from someone who inspired also us to start the company, is from Steve Jobs' commencement speech, which is to not live someone else's life. And I see this with friends and family who just starting out their careers and chasing the dream of others, chasing the careers of peers, or careers that parents want you to have. And especially I think in the new world where the old truth don't quite hold true anymore, this is truly an opportunity to forge your own path and live your own life.
Thank you, Tao, for kicking off WiT Experience Week this week with us. We look forward to building a sustainable, richer, and free future with you in travel. Thank you, Tao.
Thank you.
Thank you.